Hey guys, it's Kevin, your visa guy here in the Philippines. Today we will be talking about the reasons why expats prefer the SRV over the 13A. Now, for those of you who don't know, the SRV is a retirement visa, and 13A is the spousal visa. Both of those visas will grant the holder a permanent stay privilege here in the Philippines. The huge difference is the SRV will require the holder to put in a certain deposit in the bank. Now, there are different amount of deposit depending on the category, but in general, all those categories will still require the holder to put in a certain money in the bank, right? The 13A does not require the holder to put in money in the bank, so there's no locked in money. However, the holder must be married to a Philippine citizen in order to be eligible for this 13A. In this video, I'm going to talk about a specific group of people, a group of people that are actually qualified in both visas. Because of my years of experience in this visa industry, I have gathered 5 reasons from real life expats who were in this situation. Some of them actually went straight for the SRV, and some of them actually had the 13A spousal visa. They canceled the visa and they went to the SRRV. Now, these reasons are not just theories, these are not just hypothetical scenarios, these are real life reasons from my clients in the past. Now, without further ado, let's get right into it. Stick around, grab a cup of coffee, let's get down to business. All right, number one, the SRV is an independent type of visa. Now, this is one of the top reasons of why expats prefer the SRV over the 13A because they want something more personal. And some don't even care that there's a deposit, the 10,000, 20,000. As long as it's an independent type of visa, they're all for it. The SRV holder is granted a permanent stay privilege in the Philippines that is not connected to someone else. Compared to the 13A, it is a dependent type of visa. Whatever happens to the marriage, your visa will be affected. One of the huge setbacks about this 13A spousal visa is that even if you are not annulled, even if you are not officially divorced, but if you are separated with your Filipino spouse, and if you think that your marriage has gone south, then you are advised to voluntarily downgrade your visa. That means you're going back to a tourist. And at that point, you just need to keep on doing visa extensions for as long as you want to stay in the Philippines. A few years ago, I actually had a client in the past. He was an Australian guy. He was qualified for the SRV and the 13A. I explained to him all the costs involved, the processing, the documents required, all the things that he needs to know in both visas. And I asked him after that, which one do you prefer? The SRV or the 13A spousal visa? I mean, it's not my job to decide what visa he will be applying for. My job was just to put clarity on the options that he has on the table so he can make informed decisions. So he was actually qualified for the SRV Classic with the 20,000 visa deposit. So it was the expensive one. So I told him, in terms of cost, SRV is much more expensive, 20,000 in the bank, 1760 upfront in USD, and a year after that is 360 for the rest of your life. 13A, it's much more cheaper, much lesser, and once you have the 13A permanent residency, you just need to renew your card once every 5 years, and I think it's going to cost you 5,000 to 6,000 peso. And without hesitation, he said, Pervin, I'm going to go with the SRV. I don't care how much it costs. As long as it's an independent type of visa, I'm going to go with that. I mean, I love my wife, but I don't know what's going to happen in the next 10 or 20 years. Because if something happens to our marriage, I'm obliged to cancel the 13A. So, for him, it is much more reasonable to put in the deposit and get the permanent visa, which is an independent type of visa, the SRRV. So I said, your wish is my command. Let's go with the SRV. Here's the paperwork. Reason was actually very common among expats here that are qualified in both visas. So there are scenarios that are like that. So if you're in this dilemma, make sure to know what are the options on the table. Not just decide, okay, I'm going to go with this visa because this fits me. No, understand both of your options and then decide. It's going to save you a lot of trouble in the long run. Trust me. All right, number two, the SRV is a straightforward process. If you compare those two visas, the SRV is much more simpler. Simply because when you gather all the requirements, you just submit it to the PRA, and I think now they have the interview. And after that, you just need to wait for 1 to 2 months. And after 1 to 2 months, the PRA will notify you that, hey, Mr. John, your visa has been approved. Come to our office for the oath taking. Now, the oath taking is just like a formal ceremony, and that is the time that you will get your SRV along with your other paperwork, of course, including your passport. Now, gather the requirements, submit paperwork, wait, and then get the visa. That's it. It's pretty simple. If you compare that process to the 13A, it is much more complicated because it involves multiple visits at the immigration. To gather all the requirements, you go to the immigration office in person, you file the application, and after you file it, you will be scheduled for an interview. It might not be the same day, or could be next week or the next couple of days, but you will be scheduled for an interview. And after the interview, you will then be advised to proceed at the ACRI card section to do the fingerprints. And after that, you will need to wait for the approval. So probably 1, 2, or 3 months. And once you get the decision from the BI or the Bureau of Immigration, you will then need to proceed to the BI again for the implementation. Implementation is basically putting the approved visa on your physical passport. The implementation is not a 1 day process. If you file your implementation in the main office in Manila, it might take only a week. If you process it at the district office, let's say in Cebu, it might take a couple of weeks. So that means there's one visit to submit your passport for the implementation, and you go back in a couple of weeks or 1 week, depending on which office you file. You're going to go back to the immigration office to claim your passport with the approved visa. And if you're lucky, you can get your ACRI card on the same day. Now, that usually happens if you file your application at the BI main office. But if you will file your application like a district office here in Cebu, it might take a couple of months or a month to get your card after the implementation because you cannot get it the same day. And if you're lucky, you can get it the same day. But in most cases, it's not going to be the same day. So once you claim your passport after the implementation, you will wait for probably a month for the ACRI card. The reason is district offices cannot print cards. All the ACRI cards are coming from the main office in Manila. And before they can print a card, they need to wait for the approval of your visa. So they will only start printing the card once the application has been approved. Now, to lay it all down, for the 13A, you gather the requirements, you file the application, you do the interview, you do the fingerprints, you wait, you submit your passport for implementation, you go back again to claim it, and then you wait for the card. Now, that is a long process for the 13A, and you're not yet done. You're still applying for the 13A probationary residency. That is still the first part of getting the permanent residency under the 13A. Because if you apply in the Philippines, you need to undergo a 2-stage process. From being a tourist, you apply for a 13A probationary. You're given 1 year visa. And before that year is up, you will apply for the 13A permanent residency. So there's a 2-stage process if you apply here in the Philippines. On the flip side, if you apply abroad, let's say at the Philippine Embassy from your country, I mean, not all Philippine embassies approve 13A, but if you are in a country that allows 13A visa applications, you can get the 13A permanent visa right away. There's no probationary residency. However, you need to complete the 13A application from the Philippine Embassy in your country. You need to go to the Philippines to get the ACRI card. So basically, you get the 13A visa from your country, you travel to the Philippines, I think they are giving you a year. And within that time frame, you need to process your ACRI card, and then you're done. So if you compare the SRV to the 13A, objectively, the SRV is much more simpler. Alright, number 3. The SRV exempts the holder from the major Bureau of Immigration requirements. Now, what are those? Number 1 would be the annual report. SRV holders are exempt from filing an annual report. If you have the 13A spousal visa, every year during the first 60 days of the calendar year, you need to file for an annual report at the Bureau of Immigration office. Before, you need to do it personally at the immigration office. Conveniently, the BI has launched their online system where expats can now file for an annual report online and they don't need to go to a immigration office to do that. Number two would be the ACRI card. If you have the SRV, you are not given the ACRI card. You are given an SRV ID. You are registered with the Philippine Retirement Authority. Although the BI will grant you your visa because the Bureau of Immigration is the only office that can grant visas in the Philippines. However, you are being endorsed or petitioned by the Philippine Retirement Authority. Now, going back to the card, you are given an SRV ID. So every time you renew your ID, you're gonna do it at the Philippine Retirement Authority. And you can do it online. Even if you're still abroad, you can do the renewal online. If you have the ACRI card, let's say you have the 13A, and you went outside the country and your card expires there, you cannot do the renewal while outside the country. Now, that is one of the downside of having the 13A. If you step out the country and for whatever reason you stay there unexpectedly for how many years and your card has expired, you cannot do the renewal online. You need to go back to the Philippines and have that renewed. Number three would be the exit clearance or the ECCB. If you have the SRV, you are exempt in getting that clearance. So every time you exit the country, you don't need to get that. If you have the 13A, you need to get the ECCB every time you exit the country. So that means every time you exit the country, you need to pay fees. So I think it's around 2,000 peso, but I'm not sure, but it's around that range. So, however, you can now do it online. Before, you need to pay for that clearance at the airport every time you exit the country. Right now, because of the online system of the BI, you can now do it online. However, it's still costly. Let's say if you are a traveler and if you have the 13A, let's say you travel the Philippines multiple times, that means every time you exit, you need to pay this clearance. That is one of the downside of having the 13A. All right, number four, the SRV expanded courtesy or the courtesy category. Those who qualify for this specific category immediately decides to get this one with no thinking. They will get this one. It is because the visa deposit is extremely low. It's 1,500 USD. And once they have this visa, it's only $10 a year. Now, that is one of the huge advantage of this specific category under the SRRV. I've said this before and I will say this again. You can renew your SRV ID remotely. You can do it in the Philippines or outside the Philippines. So it's very convenient. Number five, there's no penalty if you let your SRV ID expire. This is one of the advantages of having the SRV. There are actually people here in the Philippines that have stayed here for so long under the SRV, and sometimes they forget that they need to renew something. Now, let's say if you have missed 5 years of renewal, 5 years of SRV ID renewal, the PRA will not cancel your visa. Instead, they will just advise you to pay the back fees with no penalties. You just need to pay the missing renewals that you had in the past, let's say for 5 years. So if let's say you're qualified under the SRV expanded courtesy, you just need to pay $10 times 5. There's no accumulating penalty compared to the 13A if you let your ACRI card expire because it's good for 5 years. And if you went over that and you forgot to renew your card, you will have to do a certain process. It might take time and penalties will incur. So that's a huge difference if you have the SRV over the 13A. I mean, this should not be the reason of why you choose the SRV because of this no penalty rule. I mean, you should choose the SRV for the right reasons, not because of this thing. Back in 2021, or I think it was early 2022, a client of mine in the past sent me an email like, Kervin, I'm gonna go back to my country. I'm gonna sell all my properties so I can permanently settle in the Philippines. So he did that. He went to the USA and he sold his properties. It took him a long time to finish all of his personal matters. Unfortunately, his SRV ID had expired. So he wrote me an email like, hey Kevin, my ID had expired. I totally forgot about it. Can you help me? What should I do? So I told him, hey, there's no need to worry about it. It's very simple. You can renew your SRV ID online or remotely. So what you're gonna do is you just need to pay the PRA, the renewal fees, and then they will issue you a new card. I'm gonna pick that up and I'm gonna ship that to your place in the US. And once you receive it, then you can travel to the Philippines. Okay, let's say worst case. He traveled to the Philippines with an expired SRV ID. The Philippines is not gonna reject his entry here. He will just be admitted here as a tourist. Well, if the immigration at the airport shows some consideration, then he might be given a chance to be considered as an SRV holder. But in most cases, if he is traveling with an expired SRV ID, he will be admitted as a tourist. However, later on, you can just simply change your status at the Bureau of Immigration. So from a tourist to an SRV holder. Well, that is it for today's video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Remember, this video is not to convince you to apply for the SRV. The sole purpose of this video is for you to understand or give clarity on your options on the table so you could make informed decisions. Because people are just going to throw information right in front of you without knowing what your background is. If you have 20,000 in the bank, you go with the SRV. If you are married to a Philippine citizen, you go for the 13A. Now that is wrong advice. Only you know what your circumstances are. Know your options and then you decide. Anyway, if you want to learn more about the SRV or the 13A, the ebook is still for free. It's still free for download. Links in the description. So it's completely free. When you click the link in the description, when you click the link, you go to a website, you just input your name, your email, and you will put $0. Well, if you want to support your guy out, feel free to put an amount, but it's not an obligation. It's just for free. Also, I want to give a special shout out to the people who have sent donations to the channel. Thank you guys so much. I truly appreciate your support. And because of you guys, I was actually able to help a few expats last week. And one of them actually overstayed here in Cebu. So he saw my video, he sent me an email, like, hey Kevin, I watched your videos. I love watching your videos. I've learned a lot. I overstayed here in the Philippines. I need your help. I inquired at a visa agency and they quoted me, I think it was 35 to 45,000 peso for a consulting fee. It does not yet include the penalties. So he told me we cannot afford that amount. So I was hoping if you can, help me out. So I did help him. So I sent back an email like, hey, I'm in Cebu, you're in Cebu, let's meet up. You know the places in Ayala, let's have some coffee. And then let's talk about your situation there. And after that, we have just been communicating by email. I'm not doing the work for him, right? I'm just guiding them on what to do so they can do the process by themselves. Now that is the main purpose of this channel, is for me to educate you guys all for free so that you can do the process by yourself, or if you hire an agency, you will not be ripped off. So if you have questions about this video or visas in general, leave them in the comments, or if you want to send me an email, email me at vin.philippines@gmail.com. So that is it. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you on my next video. Peace.